The prevailing view around the league is that once minicamps wrap up and the major free agency moves slow down, the bulk of the important off-season work is already done. However, that doesn't seem to be the case for the Cincinnati Bengals. A fascinating debate is gaining momentum around one specific question. What should be the Bengals' final major move before the season begins? Before we dive in, if you want to stay up to date on every update, roster decision, and discussion surrounding the team, make sure to hit the like button and type "Go Bengals" in the comments. Now, let's get to what matters. One of the biggest conversations surrounding Cincinnati right now centers on the linebacker position. Even after all the work that has already been done during the offseason, there are still questions about whether the Bengals should make one more addition before training camp fully gets underway. That discussion gained even more attention after ESPN's Aaron Schatz suggested that Cincinnati should strongly consider adding linebacker Bobby Okereke. According to the analysis, the linebacker position remains an area where the Bengals could still improve, especially considering the expectations surrounding the defense heading into the upcoming season. The argument in favor of Okereke is straightforward. He brings experience, production, leadership, and a reputation as a respected locker room presence. The analysis pointed out that while some fans continue to discuss Bobby Wagner as a possibility, Okereke may represent a younger alternative who could still have plenty left to offer. His reputation as a high-character player was also highlighted, including recognition connected to the Walter Payton Man of the Year program during his time with the Giants. What makes this discussion especially interesting is that Cincinnati's coaching staff and front office have repeatedly shown confidence in the linebackers already on the roster. The names that continue to come up are Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. Throughout the offseason, from the draft period to free agency, and continuing through organized team activities and minicamps, the message coming from the organization has remained remarkably consistent. The Bengals have continued to express confidence in these players and the roles they are expected to hold moving forward. That creates an obvious question. If the Bengals have spent months publicly backing their current linebackers, would they really bring in another veteran who could potentially alter the depth chart? That is where the debate becomes complicated. On one side, there are those who believe Carter and Knight deserve the opportunity to continue developing and prove themselves. On the other side are those who see value in adding another experienced veteran to strengthen the room and provide additional stability. The organization has had extensive opportunities to evaluate its linebackers throughout off-season activities. Coaches have watched them work alongside new teammates and continue adjusting within the defensive structure. Those evaluations could ultimately determine whether Cincinnati feels comfortable standing pat or making one final move. But ESPN is not the only place where this discussion is happening. Among fans, another name continues to dominate conversations: Bobby Wagner. While Okereke has supporters, there appears to be a strong portion of the fan base that remains intrigued by the possibility of adding Wagner. The appeal is understandable. Wagner's experience, leadership, and reputation throughout his career make him one of the most recognizable names still being discussed in connection with potential linebacker additions. The debate between Wagner and Okereke is not simply about statistics. It is about philosophy. Do you prioritize the veteran who has seen everything in the NFL and can bring immediate leadership? Or do you prioritize a player who may offer a little more long-term upside while still providing veteran experience? That conversation continues to divide opinions. Yet one thing appears to unite nearly everyone involved in the discussion. Whether it comes from media members, analysts, or fans, there seems to be broad agreement that linebacker remains one of the positions worth monitoring before the season begins. That sentiment was reinforced by another national outlet. Bleacher Report included linebacker among the remaining items on Cincinnati's off-season checklist. The report noted that expectations for the defense increased significantly after the additions of Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen, Boy Mafe, and Brian Cook. The suggestion was simple. If the Bengals have already invested heavily in strengthening the defense, why stop now? The argument continued by specifically pointing to the linebacker position and suggesting that all options should still be explored. Whether through free agency or another avenue, the belief was that Cincinnati should continue evaluating opportunities to make the defense even stronger. That perspective has helped keep the linebacker discussion alive. And while Wagner and Okereke are the names generating the most attention, they are not the only possibilities that have been mentioned. Veterans such as Shaq Thompson and Matt Milano have also been discussed as potential options. There is also interest in the concept of adding a veteran presence who can contribute both on the field and in the meeting room. The value of experience continues to be a recurring theme whenever these conversations take place. However, as interesting as the linebacker debate may be, there is another possibility that could ultimately become Cincinnati's biggest remaining off-season move. Instead of signing someone from outside the organization, the Bengals could decide to reward one of their own players. That possibility shifts the conversation from roster additions to contract extensions. And one name stands out immediately: DJ Turner. The belief presented in the discussion is that Cincinnati may prioritize taking care of key players already on the roster before spending resources elsewhere. Turner was specifically highlighted as a player who appears to be near the top of the team's extension priorities. The reasoning is easy to understand. Finding a high-level cornerback is one of the most difficult tasks in the NFL. Teams spend years searching for reliable starters at the position. Many organizations invest heavily in free agency, while others repeatedly use premium draft picks trying to find the right answer. When a team develops a cornerback internally and sees him become a significant contributor, keeping that player becomes extremely valuable. The discussion referenced projections that could place Turner among the better-paid cornerbacks in football without necessarily resetting the market. A projected deal structure of 3 years and approximately $63 million was mentioned as a possible framework. More importantly, there appears to be optimism surrounding the possibility of an agreement. Conversations between Turner's representation and the Bengals have reportedly taken place, and there is a growing belief that Cincinnati's recent approach suggests a greater willingness to be aggressive when it comes to keeping important players. That confidence has led many observers to view Turner as one of the most realistic extension candidates currently on the roster. Yet he may not be the only one. Another player generating significant attention is Chase Brown. Brown's emergence has been one of the more important developments for Cincinnati, and his future naturally becomes part of the off-season conversation. The discussion highlighted projections that could place his next contract in the neighborhood of 4 years and roughly $52 million, though there was also a belief that his market value could potentially exceed those estimates. One of the comparisons made involved James Cook and his recent extension with Buffalo. The similarities discussed centered on versatility and overall impact, particularly the ability to contribute both as a runner and as a receiver. The larger point was that Brown has become an extremely important piece of Cincinnati's offense. The organization previously transitioned from Joe Mixon to Brown, and that transition worked out remarkably well. The question now becomes whether the Bengals want to ensure that Brown remains part of their future plans through a new contract extension. At 26 years old, Brown was identified as a legitimate candidate for the kind of extension that could become the team's final major off-season move. So where does all of this leave Cincinnati? The Bengals appear to have multiple paths available. They could add a veteran linebacker and address what many observers still consider the most obvious remaining need. They could continue trusting the players already on the roster and allow Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight to take ownership of those responsibilities. Or they could focus entirely on the future by locking up important contributors such as DJ Turner or Chase Brown with long-term extensions. Each option has supporters. Each option has logic behind it. And each option would send a very different message about how Cincinnati views the roster heading into the season. What makes this situation so fascinating is that there is no clear consensus on the correct answer. The linebacker discussion refuses to disappear. The extension conversations continue gaining momentum, and the Bengals still have time to make another significant decision before the regular season arrives. Now I want to hear from you. If you could choose only one final off-season move for the Cincinnati Bengals, what would it be? Would you sign Bobby Okereke? Would you bring in Bobby Wagner? Would you focus on extending DJ Turner? Or would you lock up Chase Brown for the future? Drop your thoughts and join the conversation. Who Dey?